What if I told you there's a world out there with the most beautiful gleaming colors? A world full of mesmerizing treasures, where you find joy and purity and abundance. What if I told you that you could find an endless universe within yourself? Are you ready for a journey? Then come with us and discover the colors of the universe.
Welcome to Colors of the Universe here on KMPQ Ascension Radio. I'm your host, Ep8, and we have our lovely Tamara as our technical support, and today's guest is Jean-Paul Rice. Jean-Paul Rice is an independent film producer and one of the heads of No Restrictions Entertainment. In his work, he covers a wide range of topics from dark to light. He gives insight into Hollywood, human trafficking, and ritual abuse, but he also talks about the crucial process of healing and how each of us is challenged to heal themselves in order to change this world to a better place. Welcome, John.
Hey, Evie, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for coming. Do you want to tell us a bit more about you, your projects, and the movie you're currently working on?
Sure. So for those who don't know me, I am Jean-Paul Rice. I worked in Hollywood for the last 22 years in filmmaking. I got my start in Remember the Titans as a football player in that movie. I was an extra, but a Titan football player extra that was all over the movie, working with Denzel Washington and all the young stars, including Ryan Gosling. I was around all of them for about a month and a half. We worked every day together, just about. And that set me on a path to away from business, away from marketing, away from sales that I was involved in from the time I was 17 to 20 years old. I had an interest in the arts, and I followed my passions out to LA on a dream and ended up finding myself in a place that I did not know would become such a big topic the way it is today. So in short, those 19 years in Los Angeles were spent some as an actor, some as a producer, and then there was the person, Jean-Paul Rice, that he had his experiences as well that were later reflected upon and understood that they were manifestations of his childhood traumas, which is kind of the basis of why Los Angeles and the Hollywood entertainment industry exist in one way. Not that they are purposefully for that reason or exist for that reason, but that they draw a lot of that energy into that town. People who have been traumatized in childhood typically, move away from that trauma or try to get away from that trauma in most cases. And in my case, I did. I ran away from my family, my life on the other side of the country. I had talent, I had abilities, I had skills. And I ended up making my way through that industry while working at a both production company that did Juno, The Grudge, Harold and Kumar, Stranger Than Fiction. The guy who was my mentor, Joseph Drake, went on to do The Hunger Games at Lionsgate. He's a great guy. He taught me some of the most truest things about the business that you can't learn from a classroom or even working at a production company just to get exposure to the industry. He taught me very deep things. As a man, I got into my craft and my profession by a series of misfortunes, really. I had, at 25 years old, this is, and believe me, I wasn't like on every cover, so don't think I'm embellishing myself as some hotshot protege. But at 25 years old, after having been out there only 3 years, having not produced any movie, I was in Titans, yes, I was in a Mel Gibson film, yes, but not on the big level, star level. But what had happened to me is that I had an ability early on to discern what is a talented and good script. I met with the producers who did Little Miss Sunshine before Little Miss Sunshine was even made. I read that script, saw how brilliant it was. I read the movie About Schmidt. I saw how brilliant that was. I read the script of Kenzie. There were all these big time films, seminal films, important films, and independent films, whose scripts I had the chance to read before they were made into movies, and I was even able to discuss them and talk with them in creative meetings because the company I worked for was so small at the time. There was only like 7-8 people there, and I was answering phones and reading scripts and being part of the creative meetings during the week. Now, I wasn't the creative guy, but I had my contribution. And we were all, in the beginning, we had a mandate to go out and seek out every single rock that we could turn over to get a good project to come in, because we had money and we had the mechanism to make it happen. So I got to be a part of that, the marketing, the distribution, the sales, the finance, the production, the creative, and the whole package of that for 4.5 years. Then I went into the banking industry, and the banking industry that catered to the 1/10 of 1% in LA, which was mostly Hollywood, the Bank of the Stars, that kind of thing. I worked in a very technical position there. Without giving all the details away, I ended up being there for 13 years, and I was exposed to data and information as a systems administrator in the technical side to provide support. I had to go into the database systems to look at certain files, and obviously, not that I was snooping around. I never did any of that shit. I was very respectful of the information I was dealing with. But every once in a while, you'd see names of people that are in the news and that are in your politics and all that. And you can't help, because you're looking at a certain field in the screen, seeing the realities of the finances that were going on. And you just put that aside. You don't think about it. You don't sit there and contemplate it. You don't sit there and obsess over it. You just go, okay, I just saw this person. And then you see a news story and you go, that's totally not true in terms of what they're talking about in money. Now, that's not my world. That's not my call, right? But I started to see a disconnect since 2008 to now, to 2016. And the disconnect was that I saw that during the last financial crisis in 2008 to 2016, that the wealthiest people, when the market crashed, the wealthiest people were buying up homes and properties at a record level because they were getting it for cheap because everybody had foreclosed. And I said, you know what? While that may be true, and that is always true of the wealthy taking advantage of a crisis for the rest of us, it wasn't right. It didn't set right with me. Not that we weren't performing our jobs and are doing, that's how it's all, this is how conspiracy works, folks. I just want to explain to people, everybody is doing their job. There isn't some master plan that everybody's like rubbing their hands around like a Scooby-Doo, villain, or some evildoer in a movie that wants to take over the world has got his henchmen and his legion. This is the real life stuff that we are living through, which is why there is a collective insanity going on in the world, because there is a disconnect from the truth and reality versus what we think is reality. Now, I went through all of that, and I come into 2015, 2016, and I had little glimpses of how the industry started to change. But you're looking at a guy who, at 25, I was meeting with the people at Harry Potter, the people at 20th Century Fox, the people at Universal, not the big, heads of the studios, but the vice presidents, all the people that made films happen all around town. They could greenlight something, they could develop, they could package it, they could put them. Okay. I had a film that I was going to make for about $2.5–3 million. I had 80% of the financing. I had distribution. I had a star attached, and then everything over the course of a weekend began to unwind because that star had a problem, and the management team and everybody else was fired, and they had to find a new home, with all of the different people. And we were out of the project, and the money that had been committed with the distribution was all kind of working in concert with each other. We tried to hold on to it, and we said, you know what, we're going to walk away from this. We're going to make a movie, because we've been at this for 3 years, trying to get these films off the ground. We've met incredible people who believe we're talented. We need to go out and prove it. We need to go out and do it ourselves. So the film that I was going to make and how much money I was going to get paid on that one as a salary is the total budget of the first film that I ever did. And I didn't pay myself. I put money into it, my own skin in the game. That was called 1 Hour Fantasy Girl, and it was based on a true story about a young woman who works out of a motel room for $150 an hour in Hollywood, does whatever fantasy a man wants, as long as there's no sex, no nudity, and it's 100% legal. And to this day, it is our biggest hit, especially among women worldwide, because it's the truth. It's the truth about the non-sexual, glamorized world, the real girlfriend experience, the real dangerous shit that goes on day to day. And and the nightmare that people live through. And this was a beautiful story about hope, about finding your own inner strength, because the world bearing down on you outside is far more dangerous than the one that you are and the one that you believe you're in. And the truth is that it's all about surviving another day, but having hope, a movement forward and up. And that was my first movie, and it came out the same year as The Girlfriend Experience. I actually had a couple of reviews, especially from women who thought it was a better art movie, even though it was a lower budget, significantly lower budget than a Soderbergh film. They said that this is the real movie. This is the real story. This is the heart gut-wrenching one that you're rooting for her, and hoping she makes it out. And it's still to this day plays in over 90 countries. It is one of our best-selling of all-time movies. I'm sure men and women go into it with perceptions, and then they're pleasantly surprised in the most part. But then that set me on a path to start doing social issue films. And I was a liberal, but as I got more into these topics of child abuse, because I did a movie called Memories of a Lost Love, which is one of the most powerful films I made 10 years ago. It's a very slow burner, but it deals with child abuse in the home with the parents. And in some ways, the writer-director understood that whole movie, not the events that occurred, but the concepts of it, was a mirror into my own childhood. And I had just lost my mother to cancer the previous fall before I made this film the following year. That being said, 7 films later, and coming into 2016, politically, socially, emotionally, mentally, understanding of things was completely turned upside down when I saw Bernie Sanders completely screwed out of the nomination, not just on the level of what the media did or what the superdelegates did, which is the story, but the rigged elections that we've had globally for decades in the world and in this country. They have perfected it to a level that people believe the results, even though there's fraud. And that's by design. That gets everybody all riled up when they talk about, purging old voters off a list, that's racist. I mean, it's just such nonsense bullshit that people even participate in elections thinking that they're going to stop the other side's advancement and encroachment on their rights and freedoms. And both sides view each other as good, and both sides view each other as their enemy. And it's like each other is their enemy. So this whole time, I slipped. I'm just kind of giving a consolidated view. I slipped from Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump, but only because, again, you gave me no choice other than to look at the Democrat Party and the left and the way it had been socially engineered to come along this way, which is basically authoritarianism, as the first logical conclusion, which is what everybody's seeing right now. I saw that coming because I was with the Sanders people in Los Angeles during the 2016 primary, and I saw features of communists coming out towards the end when they got angrier and angrier that he wasn't fighting. And I said, these people are demanding everybody else see it their way, and if they don't, we're the ones who are fucked up. And this was on the left in 2016 at the end of the primary. And I think by design, they were the holdovers and they were the refugees from the Obama coalition who had been disaffected after 8 years of Bush and after 8 years of Obama, 16 years of programming from 9/11 to now. They were ready for a massive change, and Sanders won them over with at least 70% of the vote in that primary in every single state that he competed in, including the South. And in watching the destruction of that and listening to the people that I had come to believe in and understand and not know that I was not yet ready for the next layers of betrayal that I was about to find out. This outside world, as I was watching it unfold and my contemplation of it, once Donald Trump was elected and I had the collective freak out like many did, the only anchor that I had at that time was a girlfriend of mine who was a Muslim Arab woman who was dating me pretty intimately. And she told me, he's nobody. He's a businessman. We all love him over there. I know, no, he's a xenophobe. He's gonna, no, he's not. She's looking at me like, how can she see that? How can she say that? Right? So fast forward, I go deep dive into my mind, which was, how the fuck did we get here? How did the world arrive? Not just at Donald Trump, but this whole thing. How did this become the logical conclusion to which we're unfolding? And I had to know why people liked him. And I had to understand why they saw him as a savior. And the more I began to learn about conspiracy, the further I stepped into the darkest places of the world, which were plenty well documented, not through a psyop, not through some blogger or some Twitter user or some person on a fucking board. I'm just saying this for the people that need to hear it. I'm not trying to be an asshole about it. I found out the truth for myself when I went back in time and looked at everything from 9/11 to now, going back to the political elections of the 90s, watching Ross Perot on the stage, seeing the same truth being told, but our consciousness had not reached the awareness that it does today. It's been suppressed. The truth and the knowledge about the reality of this world on many, many layers, not even just in the deception of the 3D world, but the divine power that we are born as when we come into this world. And that's where people start getting, Christians start freaking the fuck out, and New Agers all get high about this, like, oh, here he goes, he's gonna sing my song. And no, I'm gonna tell you something, it's like this. You either decide at a certain point, I had to come to the place where, in steps, this is not overnight and it's not a thought exercise, this is an emotional place of being, that you either are something or you are not, and you are either going to serve, you're going to serve in your time one of two masters. You are going to have that choice in your lifetime. You're in my lifetime right now. What's going on? What's going on just today alone. And watch the trajectory of where it goes, not just in the tyranny, but among the collective that believe in the cult of COVID-19. For a virus that has a 99.6% survival rate, for which no doctor on television has ever disputed. And here we are. Look at this madness that we've done. Look at this madness that we have allowed. We have allowed this to happen to us because we were ignorant about our health. We were ignorant about our authority figures who used fear to cajole us when we knew that they were full of shit. We know our governments lie to us. We know that the media is corrupt. And yet on this one issue, because it featured the fear of dying, we tuned in and paid attention and allowed ourselves to be taken away from what we truly are. And I ask anybody who says, oh, no. I said, fine. I accept everything that you believe about the stories that you've been told as being true. What is the net effect? Are we more together on this or more separate from this? Are we more socially cohesive or destructive? And this is where I started to understand the depth of this time that we're living through. This is a child abuse system. Pedophiles who do this shit to children, they put fear in children, they are putting it in us. And we are taking the bait and we are eating it. We are eating the shit sandwiches that they are handing to us in bite-sized pieces. And we are allowing our authority over several agreements that we have made while we have moved through this life. We have made agreements quietly, consensually, and otherwise to say, yes, Mother and Father, you know what's best for me. Please do me right this one time. We are in a collective society where we have an alcoholic mother and father driving the car together. And we are children of alcoholic parents demanding that these monsters pull over the car, stop it, turn the ignition off, and hand us over the keys. They're not going to, but let me just tell you something. This is really important. There is a feature of this time that we have not seen yet come forward, and it is going to be the violent tipping point of insurrection that they want to just come out. because it proves to everybody that society on the whole cannot control itself. The dialect that these people use is they create the problem, then they give you the response, and then the solution, right? So problem, it's like, so we started with virus as a threat to our freedom, a threat to our lives. Then we had to take everything away from you in order to save you. We had to take away all your rights. We had to stop you from your work, to stop you from going out. We had to stop you from being close to your children, stop you from being close to your parents, distance everybody 6 feet apart, stroke fear 24/7 in your minds, and on and on and on with each goalpost. And the truth of the matter is the only way that they can make that possible is through fear of dying. Because we believe at the fundamental level, which is what they always remind you of, that you know you're our slave. You're our slave because you submit to fear. And we will show you that we are the managers of your fear. We're the managers of your terror. And we will tranquilize you the way we want to. And that's not something I found overnight, but I pulled piece by piece together. And as I pulled it more and more together, not just in the stories and the facts and the data, the general concepts. What is a child? What are you? What are you really? Not as the world defines you, not as you think of yourself, not as it exists. When you have, first you must seek out the knowledge. I mean, in some way, right? If you have something bothers you, like an artist, something bothers you. If you're an artist, you didn't go through the program like everybody else. You said, there's something fucked up about this here. I don't agree with this. Whether it be you saying F you to authority, or you just said, this is not my way. We're all artists. We're all born creative. We're all born to heal. The world in the program is what pulls you in through the trauma, mind control rituals that they do, because they prey upon your unconscious parents whose previous lives, I'm not talking about out of this world, the previous lives that they lived as children are memories of the past that have been buried. And because they've been silenced and muted, they are there for the right time to harvest to the unconscious level and make it into the conscious level. What they have done is they've given you 4 years of insanity on an information war level to accelerate time. Internally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. The net effect is there for everybody to see in the third dimension. You don't have to be, what is he talking about? I'm just saying, you have people on the streets of America killing each other, point blank range, who don't even know each other. The reason why that has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter or Antifa or anti-government policies. That is a cover story. That is an energetic weapon to get the signature of that energy out there. We are mirrors to each other. Parents are mirrors to their children. When you have authority figures that you give your control over, you are delegating your authority over to type figures. And in this case, in this time, among the authoritarians who don't know that they are authoritarians, are going to their mothers and fathers unconsciously, and they are demanding of them to tell you who is good and who is evil, who is telling the truth and who is lying, and on down the road. And let me say this to the people on the right and the conservatives who think that they're immune from all this bullshit. You are kidding yourselves, because you are hardening your positions through a false left that is creating a false right in you. And it's like my guy is Mr. Smith goes to the Washington versus your evildoer over here, right? That's how we do it. We play our jersey, we got our team, we're going in. This is how we go to the game, and we march into the tunnel and the Coliseum, and we make it all happen, right? We win. We defeat our enemy. That's right. We're going to teach those dirty liberals. We're going to teach those right-wingers. This is all revenge from things that are imagined in the mind, of assumptions that are made emotionally, labels that are cast upon each other because of a skin color and your gender, but there's no real skin color and there's no real gender. I mean, it's the inversion of the child. It is the total inverse. It's the child abuse system. That's why I didn't understand the depth of it until recently, starting to, how they've inverted our brains and created all of the intrinsic gifts on the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, which is a cooperative state of creation, not a contentious one. And it's not just solely limited to political, but what they did is they took all the attributes of the right hemisphere and all the attributes of the left hemisphere, and they switched them politically through identification, through language of emotion. And what happens is the inverse is what creates the perversion of the intrinsic gifts that you're born in as a child. So what happens is both sides missing each other's parts that are inherent in the co-creation of the duality, of the system, of the cosmos, of all of it, but just on a very practical level, a harmony between the right and the left, a structure for meaning and purpose and understanding is broken apart. It's pitted against each other, and the two of them will go to war against each other to destroy the very bindings that the two of them have. That's where we're in. And that paradigm is being thrown away to be replaced by another paradigm. That paradigm, which I just described in all of its arguments, all of its positions previously held, is going to be no more. Everything that once was is no more. This is why so many people are grieving right now. This is why there's so much depression right now, because we are now being shown that no, in fact, all that we had hoped for and believed was going to happen would change, and it can't. It never was. The truth of the matter is there never was not change. It's always been changing. It's always been evolving. It's always, you're changing, you're evolving. You think it's this permanent solid matter and the age and the time and the, oh, I'm getting old, and that's the matrix. Your consciousness. You go up to a 65-year-old person who, a 70-year-old person who's lived a full life, and you ask them, what do you feel like? Do you know what they tell you? I feel like I'm 25. I still feel like I'm in my 20s, but obviously, this has changed and I've gotten a little bit slower, but wisdom, awareness, they've gotten feedback. I watched I highly encourage your audience to do this. Go to YouTube while it's still there and look up John Rappoport's 2014 conference at the secret space program, Mind Control. He's talking about mind control. Okay. It's a very dry topic for most people. Mind control. Okay, I get it. Yeah. Okay. Give me all the mechanical things about what. His speech is not like anything about that. It's one of the most inspiring speeches you could ever hear, because it's the internal conversation about what can I do to stop this, to change this. And he gives an hour and a half. I'm telling you, I watch it once a year, and it will reinvigorate you to think deeper and to walk out of your old self into a new time, which is not the easiest thing to do, especially when you've been hurt as a child, because you're longing for the world to come in somewhere, some way, and say, I love you, and you're valid, and you're worthwhile. And the truth of the matter is the world can't do that for you. Just like the people who were supposed to love you didn't do that for you and left that void there. That's your missing link. That's the piece you got to figure out. That's the piece that when I looked at it myself in relation to all of my time out in Los Angeles, I started to see the ugliness in me. But it wasn't my ugliness. It was the ugliness that was put there by my mother and father, who the child, little John Paul Rice, always loved, no matter what they did to him. And that's true of all of us. Our child will always eternally love them, because That's the natural way of children. The natural way of children is not original sin, is not born with the proclivity of evil. You got to ask yourself at a certain point, your belief systems and where they come from in relation to a world run by pedophiles. Remember this. In a world run by pedophiles, you're going to believe that the Catholic Church, for which has paid $2 billion in settlements among the people that are alive today that could go to court and had enough evidence or courage to go forward. That's not to diminish the victims, but it's not easy when you're a victim to come forward and go through that process of years to try to seek justice, not for money, but to have answers for the crimes that were committed against you when you were a vulnerable and defenseless child. $2 billion in payments in the modern history of legal courts. That entity, which is its own city, has its own banking system and its own legal system. You're going to sit there and believe that those motherfuckers at the Vatican are telling you the truth about who and what you are? You're out of your fucking mind. The Jesuits and the Catholics are too fucking smart to believe this bullshit, and they need to revolt. That church is over with. The Catholic Church is going to be dissolved, as are all the other Masonic churches. This was all by design. This was all pre-planned. I'm very sorry. The truth of the matter is that Christ is the essence, is the Lord. It has been here before time. It has been with us throughout all of our time. You believe he's a man of God, a Messiah, a mystic, a yogi. It doesn't matter. Whatever your avatar of Christ is, the essence is before him. He was the manifestation. And he is all of us in a way that is not God in itself, but God, the child of God, the worthy child of God, the worthy son or daughter, the one who has always been loved by their creator and wants you to find your way back to him. Out of this prison planet, out of this hell. People will exit artificially, thinking that they're going to be able to get out. And the truth of the matter is, you better have a good sense of where you are in this world to be able to go, no, you are a sovereign being. You are a soul here. To have a soul cycle experience, an ascension, to get closer to your creator. Through matter, through friction and matter, to create another one of yourselves and put all the best of yourself into that child. Why do you think there is a depopulation agenda? Why do you think they do third trimester abortions? If you really price it out and they say, well, it's so rare and everything, it can be made elective. They don't want these women having contact with anything growing inside of their body. They'll deny them the heartbeat, Bill. And I'm not sitting here pounding on Christian concern. They're just as ignorant as the next person, but they're trying. And I'm not diminishing them because they're right. At the fundamental level, they're right. We do character assassination. Let me just give you an example. I just want to say this. We use labels of things for which we are conditioned, pre-programmed responses emotionally to dismiss the truthful information that this particular individual or this particular group can offer us. I'll give you an example in modern day that everybody knows. Julian Assange. You say the name Julian Assange and you're going to get people go, oh my God, he enabled Trump to get elected. He's Putin's puppet. Then you have other people on the other side. He's a patriot. He's a truth teller. He's a free speech. He is, there's people in the left, especially, and some on the right too, that 5 years on now, they are still with Julian Assange. Now, I think that's great, but it's kind of like, okay, what are you doing to help that situation other than draw attention to it and continue to draw attention, which is important, but it's not going to solve the problem. So we have to look at, though, past all of that and say, is the information that he delivered, no matter what the motivations or the reasons why it all happened, it came to us, and this is true. So this is about accepting the truth, the emotional reality of your childhood in relation to the outside collective insanity that doesn't make sense, that's coming apart, that's detaching. The social cohesion is being ripped apart. We were going in one direction, We went in another direction, and now we're following another direction. It's a surgical strike to gut the bottom and let everything drain out of it. And so all of the shit that our collective unconscious and our collective insanity that we have co-created and participated in through ritual traumas from 9/11 to now and far beyond before that. But I'm just saying it's easier to measure in a shorter period of time. You can see the decline from 9/11 to now. You can see our explosion of a hypersexualized materialist culture as diminishing returns have come in, as people, more and more people have gone poor. And the political parties are just there to gather up the groups in tribalism against each other, because the left is coming at you going, well, you don't want to take care of the poor? Fine, we'll tax the shit out of you. And we'll create a part of our bureaucracy. Guess what, Christians and conservatives and all of you independent people? Get off your fucking ass, get out of the church for 1 hour that you go to between your brunch and your NFL football games, and get out there and start being like Jesus and being the shepherd and going to these people. Because if you don't, you will leave it over to the state to handle. And they will make you pay for it because you've asked them to take care of it. That's the only way unconscious people seeking power know how to do it. And they'll do it through a technocratic state. They don't give a shit that if it goes from Child Protective Services to AI minority reporting on your smartphones and everything else in your house that's queued up and has a microphone in it that they can listen in on and profile you and see what you're posting on social media and where you're going, and start to realize that you are a risk and a danger and a threat that you don't get to determine, that's been predetermined through AI profiling, you're fucked. You are absolutely fucked at that point. Because you think Child Protective Services was bad. This is nothing. Now, I'm not here to scare the holy shit out of people, but this is my whole point. I've been scared the holy shit out of. I had it happen to me when I was a child, and this time has mirrored that, and it's awoken a lot of trauma. So I'm not going to sit here and try to, tell you it's been easy for me. It hasn't. But when I look back at everything that I saw in Hollywood to now, Hollywood is an exclamation point to the child abuse system. Because it's like this. People will tell you, yes, we do have war criminals and people who bomb people, call it collateral damage, and make a fucking fortune off of war. Right? And those bombs blow up women and children, the majority of which are never heard of and never seen ever again because their bodies are in pieces everywhere. Okay. We have human trafficking as an industry that you can go read about, between $100 and $150 billion a year industry, for which takes in 30 to 50 million, depending on who you read, and 2 to 5 million children a year, every year. That means there's a supply. So is it inconceivable that the war machine that is propagated by the media, by the corporations, by our politicians that are totally bought and owned, who we have elected officials confirmed that were involved with human trafficking and pedophilia, whether it's this girl or that girl, 17 or 14. How much younger does it have to get for you before you realize that this is a child abuse system? These are child abusers. What these people do to children, they do to each and every one of us. We have not woken up to that reality yet, because that's why you could say somebody like Bill Gates is involved with Jeffrey Epstein, for which the New York Times told everybody in 2019 that relationship started over 29 years ago. And you have people today believing that Melinda Gates recently found out, and she was really disgusted, and he was really disgusted, and they were all just so really disgusted with each other that they agreed to part ways, and he agreed not to have dinner with them anymore, even though they discussed business plans over 29 years. And he's just one. And that guy, the reason why he's given a pass by the media is because he serves an agenda. He is a face for the vaccine program. And this is how cognitive dissonance this time, do not underestimate your understandings of things in relation to other people's understandings of things. I have Trump supporters here in Georgia who know the mask is bullshit and got the jab twice. Nobody knows what's really going on. Everybody is guessing, and trust is eroding. Those things are a perfect storm for something bad to happen, a trigger or a snap. And the key is that it's going to trip and it's going to snap some point, sometime. We don't know when it'll happen, whether it's engineered or not, whether it's allowed to happen or not, whether it's no different. I'm just going to tell you, this is how they do it, folks. 1992 LA riots, they had one intersection where there was rioting going on. One, because of the Rodney King thing, right? And maybe it wasn't even that, but it was an excuse to get their shit out, beat people, yell, argue. What happened? All of the cameras, all of the helicopters, all of the news channels converged and broadcast that on television. And it was weeks and weeks and weeks, and fires and fires and fires erupted everywhere overnight because it amplified that energy. 96% of the United States Americans that live here have a cell phone. It's over. The first thing that'll happen will be amplified so greatly, and it will be such a draw for people, more will join and more will freak out. It's a trauma ritual. They're creating trauma rituals, and what they're going to do is they're going to try to lower you to such a state of submission. Now, the key is that authoritarianism is by force, by brute force. This is the truth of it. In order to enforce it, they're doing it exactly how they're doing it now, unconstitutionally, illegally, and without facts. Okay, that's why there's such a split happening. They're having to go for it to get as many people. Part of the reason why was because they didn't get as many people as they thought they would. In the United States here, for all that they've talked about, blacks being disproportionately marginalized and contacting COVID at a higher rate because of socioeconomic problems dealing with white patriarchy and white male supremacy. Okay, that's the left. Only 28%, according to the CDC, 28.4% of all blacks in this country have been vaxxed. That's it. And they're freaking the fuck out because they thought they would at least get half of them. The truth of the matter is evil always underestimates the good. And that today, more blacks today are more awake than ever before. More blacks voted for Donald. It's not even that they voted for Donald Trump. They voted away from the slavery system that they were once under, called the Democrat Party. But they don't realize that they've been fooled every step of the way. They got one part of the equation solved, is what I'm saying. They know now who their enemy is. It's the government, because it's always been the government for them. They've never gotten a fucking break. Government came in and gave you civil rights movement, and what do? They start pumping cocaine back into the urban centers, and then created the war on drugs and started incarcerating black fathers at a record rate to get them away from their sons. So why? Because it's a mind control program. You're going to create aggressive males without fathers who don't know how to socialize their aggression. And then they're 3 times more likely to commit crime. They're 4 times more likely to not finish school. You just go down all the statistics. It just all comports right into that. And I'm sharing a lot of this because this is all of my encyclopedia of learning over this time, to have connecting points to understand what it is that I'm seeing on a deeper level that's not being told to me. There's the show that's being told to you. It's the movie you're watching. It's the one that they're presenting to you, for and against. And it's you believing in it and you giving energy to it that actually makes it real, because it begins to live rent-free in your mind. And then you begin seeing it everywhere, and you begin seeking it out everywhere. If they tell you you're racist, if they tell you that the system is racist, guess what? It's like going to a car dealership. I'm not akinning racism to this, but think about it from a mind control program. I tell you the world is racist. I give you white cops shooting black, and I give you the context that it was racism and white male supremacy. And I hear patriarchy, and all of a sudden I get fired up and I want justice, right? But I began to see it everywhere. And I began to talk and act and think like that. And I come across other people who talk and act and think, and we reinforce each other, right? And then there's other people that disagree, and I reinforce their disagreement with me because I'm saying, no, you don't understand what I'm seeing, and what I'm saying is this. And it's like, no, you walked into the auto dealership. The auto dealership showed you a bunch of cars. You selected one, and you selected that color. And now that you've driven it off the lot, you're starting to see it everywhere. It's no different in the concept. But all of those cars that were in your neighborhood, all of the cars in your community that are just like yours, they were always there. You just didn't notice them because you weren't putting your attention towards it. Now that they have your attention towards it, you then begin to believe it's real. And now that they make a declaration on television and you have the bureaucrats following it, it becomes real. These are the authorities. The authorities can't be wrong. The authorities, mother and father, can't be wrong, even if they're killing me. Even if I see that Bill Gates was involved with Jeffrey Epstein and is running the vaccine program, my doctor told me that it's good. This is how fucked up things are. And there is no mechanical answer to fix this problem. This is where people like you and me and many others have to dig deeper on a level that we've never healed before, and not think of healing as a destination in this lifetime, but of a mission to bring ourselves back to what we were born as children when we first came into this world, before all the troubles began, before we understood what taxes were, before we even knew who our mother and father were in relation to the way a child sees its mother and father in the first 7 years of its life. And in the first year and a half, the child doesn't even know that it's human, doesn't even know that it's a baby. If you think about it, a child, when it looks up in the sky, it's filled with trees, birds, all of these magical sounds that are even more intense than we are, and not intense in like volume, but intense in the divinity of the sounds that are coming into a child. A child's in a psychedelic state of mind the first year to 2 years of its life. It actually is the really first 7. But I'm talking about where it hasn't yet formed labels and words for things to identify them. Everything is part of it. And that means that when it looks up into the sky and the 2 big faces that are above it are its mother and father, you are God to that child. That child is not your property. That child is a child of God, like you're a child of God. And if you start treating yourself like a child of God, you'll start treating all children and all people like children of God, and you will see yourself in those people. You will have compassion for them because their ignorance is your ignorance. Your ignorance is their ignorance. Ignorant about very different things, fearful about very different things, traumatized by very different things, but trauma is trauma. Fear is fear. We all have experienced it. Some, the dynamic of their fear was much more different and intense. The variables different, but the relation, the compassion, this is what I'm talking about. People had told me long ago that they were always struggling to have compassion for people outside of themselves. And I'm really going, yes, you need to forgive yourself. You need to let go. The letting go, let me be very clear. When I say let go, because this is used so kind of haphazardly, you just need to let it go. You tell that to somebody like me who lived in my childhood, I tell you to go fuck yourself, as though it's just a thought form and an exercise. And quite honestly, if you're going to tell me that it is as simply as that, I would like you to go out and talk to all those people that are beating the shit out of each other and killing each other and hateful and marching in the street and causing property damage, and just tell them to let it go and see what happens. It's not that you're wrong. It's not that the prescription or the diagnosis is incorrect. It's the prescription in which we are engaging this ourselves with this world in relation to it, as though the sickness that we're watching can somehow also heal us. That there's some kind of answer there in the illness that I'm watching. The answer can be extrapolated, but it requires a higher frame of mind to understand its both uniqueness and the common traits among all. And this is my question to the world, is like, in this time which you have learned about human trafficking of children, whatever the degree unto which your understandings are, there's stuff out there that most people don't know and shouldn't know because it's just too much. But what I'm saying is that all that you have come from before and lived through, individually and collectively, has brought you to this moment in where you're seeing the field this way. And if you want to change the picture, you have to change the one that's being broadcast from inside out. And the only way that I know how to do that is to heal trauma on a level that is not overwhelming, happens in steps, and is suited for your pace and your movie. Your movie is your movie. But I want to tell you one thing. If you go back and watch, no different than if you go back and watch your favorite movie from long ago, you'll see new things there. No different if you go back and read a book that you read years ago as a teen or a young adult and read now with new eyes. There's more there. You see more there. It's the same with your life. You will find the divine in everything that you are when you know what you are, when you assert that and you begin to say, in my lifetime today, I am going to begin taking back every single step of what I was born with so that I can be at peace when I go. And that's not a commitment to dying. And that's not a commitment to martyrdom. And that's not a commitment to disassociation from the rest of the world. It is actually the requirement to do this work is to engage the world. What I was talking about earlier about the Christians getting out of their asses in the pews and go, what do we demand today? That the poor come to us, to join the church, to sit in the pew with us, to get their life together. As long as they had gotten Christ, they'll eventually figure it out. And it's like, asshole, Jesus said, go be with them. I am the shepherd. I lay down my life for my sheep, and I will do it again. And my sheep will only listen to me because it is the truth coming through. And I will do it again according to my own accord. And he took it a step further. The sheep. Who are the sheep? Who did Jesus spend his time with? The ignorant, the stupid, the judged, the whore, the adulteress, the beggar, the thief, the leper, the lowest of the low among society, and he healed them. How did he heal them? With God's love, more than any human could ever do for them. That's all it takes. That's what we're missing. That's what our governments can't solve. That's the collective insanity that has been waged on us. And if you have any idea about what is coming down the pipe in response to this time, it is time to get your act together. This is not about a movement. This is not about going and starting some intentional community that everybody has to join. This is about laying down a blueprint for your life going forward and realizing the world that you now live in as it's been manifested and shown to you and will be evolved over time by the engineers of the unsuspecting minds. And trauma is their gateway drug to get you hooked. It can be any sort of trauma. 9/11, think about it like this, folks. 9/11 happened in New York City, and according to their reports, Pennsylvania and possibly in the county. Okay, 2 buildings came down. The whole fucking country freaked out, including the world, and we all came together individual. But then we allowed them to launch 2 illegal wars. And we justified it. And we did a version of what the left is doing to us now. We did that to all the people who spoke out against Bush on the Republican side, the Dixie Chicks. Everybody remembers this. Somehow they become a hero now. You see what I mean? We're shifting our perception according to our emotional reality, which is being conditioned and programmed here. And our autonomy, I mean, it's like this. It's like, well, what are we supposed to do? It's like, okay, well, sit idly by for the next 4 years, complain your ass off to all of the tyranny that you watch, and then when other people have come to you, you'll have what to offer them other than the fact that you're now both in agreement with each other. They'll have nothing to offer them. You'll be standing on the outside, bitching and moaning like the rest of them do, having done absolutely nothing, waiting for Superman, waiting for mom and dad to get their shit together, And then you can go, finally. Let me just tell you on a microcosmic level what that looks like. You have kids today growing up through homes where mom and dad watched pornography and did not love their child. And those children, they don't know that. They don't know this. I saw this in LA, all the spiritual community, not all of them, but a lot of them. Trans. Pronouns. Pronouns, why does pronouns matter? Because it doesn't matter. Does it matter? Well, it does to them. I'm not saying it's right or that it's even true, but think about why it makes sense to them. I had a girl right in front of me, 21, 22 years old, intelligent, beautiful, educated, talking about her spirituality and everything else. And she realized that the moment she could finally have her own pronoun to identify with, she felt that she could now be free and be in a society. This is how sick this whole thing is. Not her. She's the victim and doesn't even know. She's the unaware victim of that, for which she has to find an identity in the world in order to feel like she's part of the world. This is the separation from our birthright that has occurred through the illusion of reality. And spiritual or not, what you're going to find in this world is there are a lot of people like her who are going to be spiritual in a hypersexualized materialist culture. And that internal void that has been left for her, for which the world has given justification and righteousness for, if it can give her her identity, it can also give her her enemy. It can tell her who the bad people are. This is the new age deception over the long term, where there's going to be sociopaths, psychopaths, and narcissists inhabiting that space. And it's not just leftism. It's going to be people who are desperate. People who are desperate, who are disconnected from their true selves. They are, they hate Christians. Christians think they're the devil. It's a fucked up situation because both of them are missing pieces. And they've both been conditioned to hate the other, such to the point now that they both see each other as an existential threat, which will be stroked over time for a longer term agenda. But we're here right now. I'm just letting you know, this is how it's been designed to play out. This is a child abuse system. They are reaping the harvest. There is no way out of that. There is no election that's going to stop it. There's no quantum banking system, no invention, no technocrat. It's not, they will plug and play everybody in to sedate you. For sure. The most violent ones will be gotten rid of. But again, we're going to put in more surveillance activity. We're going to put in more smart city technology to make sure that, it's going to have all the bells and whistles. It's going to look like this. It's going to look just like this. It's going to look like this. This is your transhumanist agenda right here. What are you talking about? 13 years ago, if Steve Jobs had gotten up at the first Apple conference and said, guys, we got the best invention in the world. You're going to be able to talk anywhere, text anywhere, surf the web. But we're also going to take a picture of your face every time you want your phone opened. We're going to take your thumbprint. We're going to record every position that you've ever been and ever will be that we can predict with our AI. We're going to map all of your contacts to your social media profiles, for which Facebook has admitted that 26,000 data points exist if you have a Facebook profile and the app on your phone. You've given them 26,000 data points as of 3 years ago on you, and 1,500 data points on each and every contact, whether they have a Facebook profile or not. And they pull all of this data down, and you sit there and go, I got nothing to hide. Hey, guess what? You have no idea what prisons they are building for you. The political positions that you hold, you heard about Cambridge Analytica, that's bullshit story. That's a cover story. What these people do is they data mine you, and they are collecting data on you to find out what kind of threat level you will be in the future, collectively and individually. And they're going to make sure that the corporate state keeps you the fuck out of their institutions, so you won't even have a job interview. You will be pre-screened. That's the serious level that we're dealing with. And there will be people who walk right into it because they are desperate, and they will plug and play, not realizing that they have committed themselves to a future prison. This isn't just cities. This is smart city technology. And again, in response to this time, they're going to, again, this is the co-creation, the duality. They defund the police, for which everybody goes, what the fuck are you doing? And those same people are coming back today and saying a year later, well, crime has been on the rise everywhere. And I met with my city officials, even though I was the one who messaged defund the police, Black Lives Matter, and put everybody contentiously against the cops. And I'm just talking about here in Atlanta, this is what they did. Same mayor's coming out a year later saying the same shit with a new commissioner and all these other people saying, well, we've thought about new ways to police. Oh, well, what would those new ways be? Well, they're just talking very vague right now because you're supposed to get excited about the fact that there's new solutions coming to the problems that these motherfuckers have allowed to happen. And I get angry, of course. I'm still dealing with it on a level to see that more people are waking up on an emotional level. But let me just be very clear. The trauma raised during this time and then it being sedated again is where you're going to see the separation. The real separation is going to occur when everybody gets what they want. Then you're going to see who's who and what's what. Anybody who comes out after this time and says, I know the conspiracies, that like you're going to just try to go out there and raise this all up again, they're not going to let it happen. I'm just going to tell you. They do these things once in a lifetime to let everybody have their moment, to let it out and for an agenda, and then they put all that shit back to bed. Censorship is not going away. It's going to have a new expression of it, maybe not on the left, but with the right, it definitely will. Because again, the controllers of this world, at the end of the day, when you look back through history, the Tsar and his wife were killed in Russia. They had the communist revolution. This is a fact. The city of London, which is not part of the bank, is not part of the rest of it, said, you know what, we need a front to stop this idea from spreading this way. Again, they didn't have television back then. But they literally created Hitler as a psychopath, and they put all of the smart people around. He was the figurehead to be the front against this communist thing. But again, the co-creation and duality then created the war. And then they could use that provocation as a way to reshape the world. This is the same thing as the 1960s here in the United States. We lost JFK, Martin Luther King Jr., RFK, Malcolm X, and what happened? Cultural revolution. This one's a larger scale. It's the Great Reset. It's not a cultural reset. It's a total technological reset. And if we think that we're going to go out there like Luke Skywalker against the Empire, you're out of your fucking mind. You've got to go out there like Jesus Christ, the shepherd, over the sheeple, the sheep, the flock of 99, 100. And when one of those sheep, one of those children, one of those insolent, ignorant children that you've told 100 times not to do it, runs off and strays, what does Christ do? Christ the shepherd leaves his flock behind, searches day and night, high and low, to find that sheep and bring them back home. That is our role in this time. It is not just about now, it is about everything going forward, the way we commit ourselves to live, the way our being as we're born as children when we come into this world, the preciousness, the magnificence, the beauty, the temple that you are, the healing temple that you are, the connections to the universe that you are, the connections to each other that you are, the connections to all life that you are. This is what I've learned in this time when looking back on my life in relation to all the 3D world that I got my fill of. And that is given to us plenty by the day as a diet of trauma. And I said, there's got to be a better way to live. I don't want to live this way anymore. That's what you have to say to yourself when you're really serious about it. It's like, today, I don't want to live this way anymore. I don't like living in this world. Some people will check out. There's going to be a lot of suicides coming up this fall and into next year. It's going to be an ugly feature of our society. Children on a record level, women on a record level are killing themselves and also turning to Satanism as a curiosity. Not because they're evil people, but again, when you lowered everyone's vibrational energy and you've taken love away from them and you've distanced everybody at 6 feet for the last year, which your Taurus in your heart with fear is limited to the distance of 6 feet in every direction. So it's perfect that you don't have any telepathic, kinetic communication and love, heart feeling. We have had everything shut down and had to readapt and have changed our structural behaviors and our habits because of the disconnection. And that disconnection now is become a nihilism in a lot of people. It's become a hedonism. And that energy that is out there will affect us if we ourselves don't heal that in ourselves. See, people want to look for community to start somewhere. They want to look for an answer somewhere that exists outside of them. It's a place, it's a destination. The destinations are here. And that's so hard for us because we're messaged from birth that it's not. It's the job, it's the car, it's the lifestyle. Look at all of the self-help books and the bigger superstars of that world. They're messaging to you, look, you can have the life you want with the money and the wealth and the success, and you can go for your dream. It's a really nice message. And it's all to get you going out there to learn how to be a better unaware slave for the system. Because he's not telling you need to quit your job and become a creator. He's not coming at you and saying you need to develop your born-in divine gifts, your intuition, your imagination, your creation, which is taken out of you from the time that you enter school. They literally, not the teachers know this, but the structure of the education system is to strip you of all your divine gifts, all of your creativity, all of your intuition, all of your art, all of your feeling. They make it highly analytical and literal in every which way. And that pulls a child's imagination into a yes-no, defeating ideas before they've even started. And how many times can we say that we do that? All the time. Before we've even tried. Before we've even said a word or somebody even opened their mouth. And this is the truth about this time too. Everybody is judging each other without saying a word. That mask means something to me, means something to him, means something to her. Judgment. Oh, you're a pro-mask. You're a stupid person because you're wearing a mask. Oh, you're a stupid person because you're not wearing a mask. You're not following science. Guess what, folks? Science in their world has become God. And that concept is not going to abate anytime soon. These are sobering truths, I understand. But what I'm trying to say is, you already know this. You already feel it. You just need to come into the solid being of the knowing that you can create and are creating at all times. This is not a competition. It's a competition with yourself. If you want to have a competition with yourself. Challenge yourself. Anyway, I've been talking for 30, 40 minutes straight. I just wanted to, these are just my stream of conscious, but now you get to ask all the wonderful questions.
Yeah. It's all good because that's why I invited you, because you have a very holistic view, as I would call it, and you come from one point from the outside to a point in the inside and make a connection. But give me one quick second here.
Sure.
I quickly need to do something.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
All right.
There.
All right. So.
Yeah. So in one interview, you said something really touching. It was about your mother, and on the outside, she was a perpetrator, but then you also mentioned that she was a victim at one point. And I think it can help all of us to develop some compassion if we remind ourselves that the people we see who are doing things we think are bad and are probably bad, that they were a victim at one point as well.
Yes, that's right.
So, yeah.
That's right. That's the tragedy of exploitation of victimization, right? Because if you really look at it on a psychology level, here in the United States, the university system, I saw this a couple of years ago. These young black girls on college campuses. Now, we're talking about college campus that costs $40,000 a year to go to. So this wasn't like a public college where people were commuting. These are educated, well-financed, well-funded minds that are going to high-level university. And I was watching these young girls talking to their white professor who was trying to, in very calm ways, talk to them. And the response did not meet, the moment where they had meltdowns. These girls were in panic and terror over the fact that this white man was not seeing it their way. And that's when I realized, I said, this is not about any of these issues. This has to do with a deeper issue, which is about child abuse. Where it concerns my mother, I'm just going to speak on a couple of facts, not because she deserved, like all of us do, to be loved as a child. Once you realize that those people that are killing each other right now, that you see beating each other up, killing each other at point blank range in New York City and all that, all of them were children long ago, before they became legal, before they walked into that store or on that street and were filmed on camera. They had an entire life before that. And they have to be accountable. Let me be very clear to people when I say these things, because people say, well, you're giving him an excuse. I'm like, no. I'm showing you the commonality that's going on here so that you don't have to see yourself as separate from somebody because their expression of their trauma is vastly different than yours. But for which, if you trace the steps back to your own in relation to theirs, you'll see that you had somebody who loved you, somebody who cared, somebody who didn't slap you across the face when you cried, somebody who didn't shoot up heroin when you were the one who was sitting there with shit in your diapers and you were crying your eyes out and were hungry. It's very different. Like when I get up there and I hear people like Ben Shapiro, and I'm not picking on him, but he really is an unconscious man to sit there and say that life is all about it. I mean, I'm saying in the general sense, so if they're trying to quote me, but he's basically, his rhetoric is life is a series of choices and you make bad choices, you're going to have bad outcomes. Yeah, and the sky is blue. So my question would be, well, Ben, why do you think people make very bad choices for themselves, not seeing the direct correlation between the hurt and the pain that they're feeling inside and the hurt and the pain that they're causing? And that's because we have ourselves a story that we've told. It's first told to us by our mother and father. My mother was born of 9 children in one of the wealthiest families in St. Louis in the 1930s and 40s. Self-made wealth, Irish. They were connected to money. They would be in the top 5% today. Pretty good. Millionaire status. Educated. The mother and father slept on opposite sides of the house. They did not allow their children to individualize. They ran a very domineering type of environment where there was fear everywhere. And there was incest, and there was secrets, and there was alcoholism, and there was violent, not murder, but soul murder of all of their children, for which the results I've seen in how it's all played out in their family over 3 different generations now. My father's side, similar in abuse, different in the dynamic. Two children from two parents. These are people, let me just tell you, if I had their pictures in front of you right now, and I showed you pictures of them as babies, pictures of them as children, pictures of them as young adults in photographs at the prom at Notre Dame where my father went, put himself there. He was a star athlete. You couldn't see on their faces that these people would do such horrors to their children. You could not see it. You could not believe it. Such the point, I remember my girlfriend when she went with me from college to visit my mom during college. This was in my 20s, and I barely knew. But I had left my mother. I left my mother when I was almost 17 years old because I had to get out of there. She was literally mentally ill. And I'm just telling you, like, at 7 years old, I tried to kill myself. And by 8 years old, I was in a hospital. Not straitjacket, padded cell, but I was in a hospital for children, in a wing of the hospital in the 1980s in Louisville, Kentucky, where a girl by the name of Becky and a girl by the name of Jennifer, both 12 and 11 years old, had both been having sex for money, trafficked, since they were 10 and 9. And Jennifer was on her way to becoming a sociopath. That's 13. My mother wanted to love me, wanted to in her mind, wanted to escape the fact that she wanted to murder her father and murder my father for what they have both done to her and their children. I came along at a time when she was 38, her alcoholism and her mental illness was fully blown. She tried to kill me haphazardly twice that I remember, through proxy, through my father and another pervert who had gotten out of jail. This was an educated woman. This was a funny woman with a sense of humor. Evil is not conscious of itself. And that's what I came to understand. It is becoming more conscious of itself in this time that we're living in on the whole. But what I'm talking about is, you have to remember, when I talk about healing, I'm not talking about you forgive your mother and father for the shit that they did to you. Alice Miller, in her book, Drama of the Gifted Child, there's For Your Own Good and The Body Never Lies. Those are 3 books for anybody who is ready to deal with this. And it's not a painful process in the sense that it has to be torment for you. But if you're ready to hear the truth, those books are Bibles. She said something that was so profound about the 4th commandment. She said, honor thy mother and father is used in a way that is authoritarian and is about submission to the mother and father's desires, that the child is to shut up, be silent, take it, that my mother and father did the best they could, and you are supposed to like it. And then you're supposed to forgive them, but not heal, forgive them. When they haven't even asked, when they haven't even shown you that they're repentant on anything that they've done to you. And guess what? The sad truth is the majority of them will never. Because at the time that you needed it the most, when you were a child, they could not deliver it, and they have no access to that for which you had the illusion they did. All children, including my mother and all of our parents, loved their mother and father. The narcissist, the sociopath, the psychopath, the torturer. I met a girl yesterday who reminded me of the cruelty of parents with their children who say that they love them. She used to cut her toenails for her with scissors as a child. And the girl would lay down and stick her feet down and turn her head away, because this had been a ritual that her mother had done since she was a little child. To cut her toenails, she would clip the scissors just ever so close to the skin on the toes so that she could make her bleed. And when the child dared to say that she was doing this to her, to harming her, Mom said, "No, I'm just cutting your toenails. What are you talking about?" My mother tortured me mentally, emotionally. I wasn't beaten, thank God. I was sexually abused like nothing else between the two of them. And people ask me, because the truth of the matter is that I wanted both of them dead. I mean, inside, the child in me, this is the thing I'm going to tell the spiritual community to wise up. Do not underestimate this abuse for which you have gone through that's given you insight. Do not underestimate it to think that you have arrived at a destination where you feel that you have resolved all of this when you're freaking out about other things that are going on that have nothing to do with you, and you're not in control of stopping. That's the first sign that there's something wrong. Something else is going on. When I went and looked at all of this and uncovered it, and how I came to be with my father a year ago before he died at the end of his life, and experienced 5 days of joy with him. This is a man who raped me in my asshole, who split my asshole, who I had to go and get surgery to be done when I was 20 and 21. And I had hemorrhoids all of my life because of that trauma. I gave myself over to the divine, trusting in, not in the suffering and the feeling of, oh, the grief and the guilt and the shame, and I have to carry it. I did feel like I had to carry it, like I had to carry it my whole life, like all of us have to carry it. But what I was able to do was I was able to surrender that, cry it out deeply with the emotional reality of my childhood to begin to heal my soul. And so by the time my father's death came around, I was able to love him unconditionally in a way that you could never have told me that that's what I would do. And I didn't have to say a word to him. I didn't have to ask for his forgiveness. It was already given to him. And these are the teachings of Christ that say, forgive them and they will be forgiven. And when you forgive them, your Father in heaven will forgive you of your. These are not arbitrary rules to live by. These are ways of living that require us to do the inner work, to really dig down and have the courage and strength of our convictions as children on this planet. Because these monsters are, if anything, it's just all one and the same. I'm not telling anybody, you have to forgive your mother and father. But the fourth commandment that tells me to honor them, I will honor them in the children that they were born to be, that they were denied like I was denied. That's where I can go to love them. That's where I can go to be with them. That's the truth about my emotional reality of childhood in relation to them. My father's suffering was my suffering. His suffering was my suffering. And when I looked at him as he was dying, I saw the beauty of his child in him. When I did not judge my father, when I relaxed that guard for which had been up for so long because it needed to back then, I started to see him not as my father, but as an old man. And I could let go of all the things that I wanted him to do that he should have done, or let go of all the bitter resentment that he had and anger. And you know, the truth of the matter is, when I sat across from him in the restaurant at Christmas time, he gave more to me than he ever had given before, because I asked nothing of him. And I realized that he had been demanded of forever in so many ways, which had become his prison, for which he could not see. And this is where it kind of gets into that higher power that we all talk about tapping into, which gives us the divinity and the strength to know the difference and to be able to give beyond our own imaginations as to what is possible. And that's what I've learned in this time, that the human body and the human mind and the soul together, when you put it closer into alignment with each other, it begins to ascend you. It begins to awaken you. It begins to open places in your brain, in your mind, in your heart, in your space, in the openness of the world to a new signature, one that is unconditional in its love. And it is not for the faint of heart to go after this, especially those who have been traumatized the most, because the truth of the matter, you will be confronted with some of the darkest pains that you've put off. But I will tell you this, and Alice Miller will as well, the body never lies. You can forget it, but the body will never make you forget it. So what I'm saying to the people that are hearing this for the first time, maybe the second, or maybe no, that everything that you put off today is a bill come due for later. No different than the world that you're watching today. We have put this work off for far too long. We have believed in our systems. We have believed in our icons. We have continued to vote for this shit, and they leave us empty-handed every single time. And let me just tell you, you and I and everybody else are meant to pay. We're the ones who have to pay for the price of this. I don't think, I don't talk about a grand divine plan and say that it's all kumbaya and everybody's going to come along and it's just going to be so awesome when we get there. It's like, you can think that and that's fine. But if you stay there, then that's where you'll stay. And the rest of the world will move past you very quickly. Because the truth of the matter is that we're not meant to be fossilized, permanent creatures of specific drives that, myself in relation to these other fucked up people, therefore I'm better than you, or I'm right, or I'm less sick than you. Because I made all of those excuses all my life. And it took me until I was 38 years old, until I had run out of excuses. I had to start dealing with myself, and I had to start looking at myself in ways that were not pleasant and pretty. But the only way that I healed was crying it all out. And once I cried out the truth in steps, not all at once, 2 years, solid, really hard, in moments, in waves, the deeper the divine came in, the deeper the understandings came in, the deeper truths came in about the universal truths about all of us. And they're not, trauma is so vast in terms of it doesn't give you, that word doesn't give you the full context of the unspoken, right? It's the unspoken, it's the intuition, it's the quiet moments that don't have words. It isn't the trigger point. It's the moment that it comes and I don't know why. And my thing is just to try and embrace that for which you are experiencing, to question the nature of your reality, not that you are a stranger in this world, but that you are a part of it, and the world has told you are a stranger. That's the program that you took in. And if you're going to reverse the flow from fear into love, you must take on the courage that a loving heart has. Courage is not a virtue as an effect of an idea that I am going to be courageous in this moment. Courage comes when you don't even know it's there and present, but everybody sees it. And that means that there is something about you inside, and I'm going to tell this to everybody, every single one of you. I went about this to do the work so that I could complete the work that my mother and father were not capable of doing. I made the decision and said, this shit ends in me. It ran in my family before it ran into me. And you keep saying that day in and day out, and you love yourself that much more, you will get healthier. Instead of being part of the Great Reset, you'll be part of the real Great Awakening, not the messaged one, not the world of knowledge, not the knowledge of man, but the awakening within to your true divine purpose as you first were born into, with all of these gifts when you came into the world. And so when I looked back on my mother, I could see the beautiful child that she once was and what she had dreams for. All of her friends, her hopes. No child wants to see their parent that way. No child conceives of their mother and father being wicked and selfish and taking of them when they're in pain. I mean, I'm healing this part of myself. I know that I got emotional, but I'm exploring these layers because I've come to that understanding. I no longer want to see them that way anymore. Not because I'm in denial of it, but because I don't have to. I know what I am. I know what you are. I know what I know who they are. I know who we all are. The separateness that we have created is because of these rituals that have been foisted upon us and caused us to pull more outside of ourselves, more into the belief in the world as it exists, as it can only be. It stunts our growth and our creativity. They do it through fear. It's the mind killer, man. It's the mind killer. It'll keep you in that lower energy center all the time. Survival, survival, survival with righteousness. Survival, survival, survival. And keep going, keep pushing, keep trying. We're almost there. A little bit more and we're almost there. Come on. Come on in. Come on into the reality that we have for you. And the more that we say no, not through protest, not through sign, not through politicians and petitions and all of that, but you just go and start living that way. You create the world that you want to live in. And guess what? When you find it and other people get sick of the old one, you'll have something to invite them to. Here is the land. Here is the food. Here is the water. Here is the culture, the real culture, the human culture. The one that says, give me all of your burdens. Show me all of your features and let me show you a new world that I have built that is ready for you, that is welcoming to you and wants you, and no one will ever go back. Once you know the truth about yourself in this world, there is no turning back. You may have to go through some very painful ups and downs to come to these, the knowing for yourself is not where belief is. The knowing for yourself is in the present moment where the future is literally being manifested right this very minute in each and every single one of us, and especially the world of children. In natural law is not a court. Natural law is not a legislator. Natural law is lived in the principles that bring forward a higher trust society. And if you want a quicker path there, embrace all the teachings of Christ, extrapolate on it and say, did this story really only begin and end 2,000 years ago, or is it still going on right now? And I look outside of the world and I say, is that a God? Is that a godful world? Or is that a godless world that's manifesting itself? So.
Yeah. Do you think it's necessary to go through all the darkness to even come to the truth?
When you say go through all the darkness, what do you mean by that? What would you find that is darkness?
Pain. So do you think that people, how can I say it? Do you think that people have to go through a lot of pain and suffering in what way ever in order to find their true selves?
That's a very good question. My way has been to plow through it. And somebody told me, and I'm just using this as a reference because I don't really know, I haven't looked it up, but I described to somebody my process to deal with it. And I would say that no therapist that I have ever met could do what I'm doing right now with me, but I have a partner who I talk with every day and who is what I would consider a compassionate mom, parent type mirroring figure that doesn't judge me and allows me to get all my temper tantrums and all of that, frustrations out. And then in doing that together, we're like a soundboard for each other. We're both healing in our own ways. I'm bringing things out of her. She's bringing things. And it's not necessarily directly in our speech. It's just through the honest, authentic expression of it, right? So what I would say is that start with the world first in terms of judgment that you pass for or against something, and look and where your energy and attention and awareness go in terms of what draws you in and what does not, passionately or otherwise, right? Okay. Finding meaning in what you do as a result of that, as so far as like, say, you want to, just as an example, you hear about human trafficking, you want to start a podcast for survivors. You hear about human trafficking, you want to go and work at a shelter. Okay, that's making meaning through the disturbance of that issue for which you are called to address, right? On a just an observable level. Doing with others is what will heal you. Staying separate and isolated and waiting till you get, like, let me just kind of, I'm going to get back to your question because I do want to answer it directly, but it's kind of like this. You hear in Hollywood all the time of an actress. Now, I'm not talking about famous actresses like in their 20s who say, when I get rich and famous one day, I'm going to open up a shelter and I'm going to take care of all of these kids and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, so you're going to make all these kids who are dying right now and suffering, wait 10 to 20 years for you to become rich and famous so that you can bless them with money and charitable do-gooder things. It's the same truth about people who are healing, saying, well, I got to heal first before I can even get, no, you can heal. You can be somebody to anybody right now. You can be somebody to a child who doesn't know who you are, who doesn't know all the ugly details and secrets about you that you're trying to work out. That child will not judge you in such a way that they will see you as less than for being authentic. That child needs you to be authentic. That brother that you have, that aunt, that uncle, that friend, they need you. And so if you say, well, I can't really do that until I get better, but I'm going to let everybody else go to shit who I say I care for and I'm really concerned about. You see where I'm going with this? These are our contradictions. These are our agreements, the upside down ones that we make. And so we distance ourselves to say, you know what? It's a nice excuse, it really is, to say, I'm not ready yet. Okay, don't say anything to anybody else. Don't tell anybody else what to do. Because when you're ready, you're going to know you're ready. And you're going to walk in that path knowing that you survived the worst. And you're going to say, you know what? I'm going to shoulder up. I'm going to level up in this lifetime for once. I'm not going to live the way they want, these cultural engineers want me to live, and sedate myself and explore all endless pleasures that they offer me to take me further and further away from myself. You've got to start laying down foundations of truth that make sense on a universal level across everything. There cannot be any more contradictions anymore. You make contradictions, you have cognitive dissonance. You make agreements with yourself that are in direct, we all have them. Let me just tell you, you're going to discover them in your lifetime more and more as you go along. And they're not self-imposed prisons of conscious level. They're unconscious prisons that bind us to these agreements that for which we see everything. So, does it require you to dive into the deep end of the pool head first and go, here I come? No. In fact, I tell you not to do it. I think that for people who are working in a very holistic sense, and I mean this in a very safe manner, I think psychedelics from plant-based medicines such as marijuana to mushrooms, and I know there's DMT and ayahuasca, but I'm just talking about for your regular folk. This is fire. This fire should not be played with. It should be respected, understood with intention. And once you have all of that bearing as to understanding how fire works, you can let it teach you. But until you do that, if you recklessly go into it thinking, I'm going to get high and I'm going to get some God in me, you're asking for a really huge fucking trouble. And let me tell you, there's going to be plenty of people that are going to pull you into demon spirits that seem light in this time. It's going to happen. So don't fuck around with that shit. I've done it. And I'm not saying I did it so nobody else can. No, I'm just saying I created my own regimen of regression. I put myself in the higher place and the lower place. And I was going like this to resolve the depths of my childhood, which is much different in contrast to other people, not separate from, just much different in terms of the severity. Let me just say this, because that's why I don't try to tell people what they have to do. I am a miracle to be here, statistically. I should have been a prostitute, a meth addict, a transvestite, a serial killer. When I say I should have been all those things, I had all of the signatures of the molestation, the abuse. You understand? So this isn't like I was thinking like this. When I look back now and I look at the traits of a serial killer and a sociopath and a prostitute, and I say prostitute, girl who's human trafficked, a stripper. I was friends with a lot of strippers, a lot of porn stars in LA. I dated a few. Not, like, oh, it was just some cool guy. I was looking for love. That's how fucked up I was. And that's where I was looking for it. And they were also looking for love too. In their dark world. With the cards that they had been dealt. And they're all trying to figure it out like I'm trying to figure it out. The truth of the matter is that you already have, this is the part that I'm learning, and I can impart to you with absolute confidence that I know it's true. What you were born as is not something that is long forgotten in the past of reality in terms of your memory, yes, but your powers are still there. They just haven't been used. This muscle hasn't been used. It's atrophied. And you have to go to the gym and you have to pick up this 5-pound weights. And you can put the 10-pound weights and the 20, 30, 40, and so on and so forth as you build up, as you flex that muscle, as you grow and redevelop it. This is what I'm trying to say, is that you can make yourself stronger, not by the pain that you endure, but the reservoir of what you pull in from outside of you in the divine heals those areas and makes them go away. On a practical level, for people who have dealt with very intense trauma, the havening technique, and I'm going to give you those links if I hadn't already, the havening technique is paramount, fundamental. Those cell receptors, just to explain this really quickly, those cell receptors in the medulla oblongata, which is connected to your pineal gland, when you experience trauma on any level, whether it's in a child or yesterday, those cell receptors fire out like this, intense, and they start to create a filmy paste around them. Okay, that's designed so that your fight or flight in that moment is remembered by your brain. And your fight or flight is telling you in your brain, not when you're experiencing in the cortisol levels necessarily, but it's going off to say, there is a threat out there that happened and occurred, and you need to be on alert for it to happen again. Okay? It's the organism learning its environment. When you do havening, you elicit delta brainwave state, which is what the child is in, what meditative levels people go in, theta, delta, below alpha, beta, and gamma. And what that does is it takes the receptors and it calms them, and they start to go back into the cell, and they go inside the cell. And once they're inside the cell dissolves those receptors and expunges them out along with that filmy paste, gets pushed out of the body little by little, and those traumas never come back. So to answer your question, do you have to go through all of this trauma and this horror? Well, my method is yes for me, because this is how I was made. So I'm reversing that by using my old program to heal. So the intensity of what I've been through as a child is being matched and mirrored through my approach that I've developed in order to heal my trauma. It's no different than if you're going to use EMDR, havening, EFT, matrix reimprinting, or any other healing modality. But this is not about coping mechanisms. This is not about coping with triggers the rest of your life. This is actually healing the PTSD. This is about healing the manic depression. Our mental health crisis is not one that can be solved by medicines or by technology, although that is what is presented. It has to do with the fact that the mind has been traumatized in such a way that it has split off from its perception of reality and is in direct contrast with that. And if you want truth about this, just go look at the studies that show when they take schizophrenic patients and they move them into the forest, their symptoms drop by 50% within the first few hours. Because the outside world, now having been replaced with nature, makes sense. Remember, it's a terrified little child that is seeing all of this horror for real. And it can't make sense of it. And the outside world can't make sense of them because they're seeing something that isn't there, but but to them it is. And I've watched mental health progress in people. And homelessness is the breeding ground because the isolation, the detachment, the disconnect with a bunch of other traumatized people. And so you have a lot of unconscious people fighting each other, attacking each other, yelling at each other, trying to live together. This is what I'm talking about at the end of the day, is that if Christians left the churches, you could put 3 to 1 parishioners on each homeless person and you would heal them within a month or two. This has been done in shanty towns in Africa, not because of Christed light alone, but they had shanty towns. This is where women were bearing 6, 7, 8 children, most of whom didn't live past 4 years old, the average life expectancy. This is in the 20th century. This wasn't like far away hundreds of years ago. This is when there was industrialization. This is when there were other areas where there had been corporatization coming in, depleting all the natural resources and then leaving everything. So there were no doctors, there were no nurses, there were no police officers, there was sewage in the streets that people were dumping. So there's disease. There's open black markets out everywhere where people are bartering and trading and killing, and kids are being armed at 3. This is all real life over in third world country in Africa. And you know what they did? Out of their own self-preservation, out of their own intuition, they said, you know what? If anything goes off here, it's going to spread everywhere, and we're not going to be able to control it, and it'll go into the neighboring towns and then cause more damage, more corruption, more disease, more crime. Right? More violence. It's going to spill over into our areas where there was no violence anymore, where there was no homeless once more, because all the resources are going to become more depleted. People are going to become more desperate. People are going to start looking outside for answers. They went in a coordinated effort. In 6 months, they drove the birth rate down to less than 3. Most of those women who had been prostituting themselves for money to feed themselves, their kids, and their drug habits all started being given microloans to the tune of $25, $50, and $100 so that they could have a chicken, a sewing machine, and whatnot. They started producing their own goods. Within a year, the GDP had tripled. Everything went back to normal, beyond better than it was before. We are self-improving, healing human beings. We have it within ourselves to do it. And once you prove yourself that you can, there is nothing that can stop you outside of that, because it's up to your imagination as to what the limits of that potential is. That's what we're born as. Children are infinitely programmable, as in infinitely upgradable. Beyond what we think today. Roger Bannister, 100 years ago, ran the 4-minute mile, never had been done before. They talked to him, how did you get there when you weren't the best athlete, the most trained, this, that, and the other? He says, I imagined myself doing it. And what happened? And he proved himself to do it. And what happened after that? Weeks, months, and years after, hundreds of people broke that record and broke his. So this is what I'm talking about. These are training wheels, but we just got to start getting those tracks going and getting on them, because this is the world. This is the reality. We either are or are not doing this. And look, I'm not saying some of you will come along later. That's fine. We're not worried. And I say this, I'm not making declarations against people. You cannot concern yourself with the people who say, not me. You cannot base your argument for or against something because of the opposition that's thrown at you. You have to be a force for creation. It's not an easy thing. I mean, if you don't want to do that, then go get a job in the system. They'll make sure you have all the titles, all the awards, all the acumen that you want, and you can feel good about it and provide for your family and everything else. Fine, that's okay. There's people that are going to do that. I'm not sitting there condemning them. In fact, I hope that they live the life that they want to, such to the point that we come together and say, hey, welcome back, Breakaway Society. We're sorry you had to go, but we're glad you rode it out here with us. And look, we maintained the fort, so help us build a better fort. Okay, cool. Great. It's not about declaring yourself better than or less than somebody. There's going to be plenty of that shit to go around in this time, believe me. And there's going to be a lot of judgment handed down. My hope is that the grieving and the reconciliation come because you've done that work already or begun that process for yourself and can give that to somebody who desperately needs it, including a child. If anything about human trafficking, guess what? You know what creates human trafficking? Abusing your children behind closed doors. Ghislaine Maxwell said it best about the girls that she was going to the West Palm Beach County in the trailer parks. Those girls are nothing. They're trash. She offered them drugs, money, and alcohol to come into a car with her. That's how easy it was because they had no foundation. That's not the girl's fault, but that's what happens. They join their own family. They recreate their family. They find their gang. And for me, it's like this. It's like, if you don't stand up for all children, at the end of the day, this is the truth. No matter what is unveiled, no matter what is unrolled as a response to this time, whether it be something you agree with or don't, if we do not build a society, a structure that starts within us around the focus of the needs of all children, it will not matter what comes as a result. Because what we are essentially doing, if you want to price it out, if you neglect children in this time and your own inner child to heal in this time, you are condemning the future of children in a prison on a level you have never seen before. We are rolling our dice. We are rolling the dice for the future. If we do not take the lessons of human trafficking and understand that the pedophile is created in childbirth by parents who do not love it in a healthy and loving way for which that child has no access to a safe adult. That's what creates the pedophile fundamentally. That's why they go after children. They are attacking the very innocent, defenseless child that they once were. Sociopaths and psychopaths do irrational things to harm people in defense of themselves. Pedophiles do exactly the same thing. This is not a compassionate plea for you to understand a psychopath and a sociopath who will never change and will not stop harming you, but it is to see where that human being came from and why they did what they did and what kind of life they had. Not that you have to feel sorry for them. I would feel sorry for the child they were, because the child had no choice like we had no choice. That was their lived experience. It's not right what they're doing. It's not helpful in any which way. And anybody who tries to tell you that, oh, well, you know, we need to understand. No, we don't. There's going to be people in future times that are going to try to tell us that we need to understand these people. We need to come to, you know, be more compassionate. All of the same things I'm telling you right now. But again, it's the prescription. It's to normalize it. It's to not understand what perversion when you know what is true about you and what a child is, both biologically, spiritually, emotionally, divinely, there isn't any other question that needs to be asked as to, oh, why does this happen? Oh, where does that come from? Oh, God, it's just so horrible. Yeah, it is. Everything that the majority of the shit in the world comes from this stuff. They do it to their own children. They put that fear in their children and they put that fear in you on television. That is an observable fact in this time. People in the media, the billionaires, the CEOs that own these media corporations, They know very well with the money that they have in not only invested and earned from you, that it works, that fear works on you. They have nothing to tell them that it doesn't work. You keep tuning in. You keep following the herd. So it's like at a certain point, this is what I had to do with all the cognitive dissonance in my head and all the contradictions. I had to strip it down, strip it down, strip it down, strip it down, and come to a new understanding about the reality of what we are. And at the end of the day, it either is or is not true. I know for a fact that the people in Los Angeles who at the highest levels are involved in satanic pedophilia, I don't give a shit what anybody says, that industry is satanic. It has become satanic. It wasn't always that way. It is, but it is that energy, that psychopathic energy, along with the pedophilia. These are not godly people. They believe themselves to be gods like Luciferians do, gods of knowledge in relation to man. They cannot perceive a quantum field like the Holy Spirit. They think that's junk. They think it's bullshit. And you got to ask yourself at a certain point, why does Hollywood and the media spend so much time mocking and denigrating Jesus if he's really nothing? Little Nas X came out. I just want to say this about for the Christians. You have no idea what has been laid out for you and pre-planned. That is not to be in a position of fear, nor it is a position of reaction. But Little Nas X, when he came out with Montenegro, 1 week before Easter Sunday, Palm Sunday, with a man who wakes up in the Garden of Eden, is tempted by the devil, the snake, and is sent down into the depths of hell on a stripper pole, where he comes in with his panties on and gives Satan a lap dance, then turns around and breaks Satan's neck, takes the horns, puts them on, and his black wings show and his light, Lucifer. He knows very well what he is doing. He is an unconscious man, but he knows who he's serving right then and there, knowing full well that they have put him in front of children the year before, and that is his huge, large base, and that they are putting the pentagram out on a shoe with human blood in it and saying, well, Nike is suing him. Bullshit. That group for which created that shoe was in the New York Times the year before, and they had a picture, a photo spread of all the people working at that company who make that shoe, who had licensed Nike for another shoe. They have a pentagram in that picture, in that New York Times article, where they all gather every single day to discuss the daily meetings of the company. So the idea that Nike farmed its trademark out, didn't see that there was a public disclosed article, and that a multi-millionaire Grammy award-winning artist would just haphazardly put himself in the largest trademark violation to get sued for hundreds of millions is just fucking ridiculous that anybody buys that bullshit. It's the same thing with Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick takes a knee, talks about racial injustice and cops. I just accept it at 100% face value. I'm not going to argue whether or not that's true. But what did the man do? For 4 years, we debated whether or not the NFL was racist or not, whether the country was racist or not, whether cops were racist or not. And what did this motherfucker do? He ends up walking away with a multi-million-dollar NFL star level deal, having not snapped a single down in 4 years. And he gets paid the same amount of money that Tom Brady does. Why and who? From Nike. Who is Nike? Nike is one of the largest importers of slave labor in China. What is Colin Kaepernick doing? Talking about the company that pays him? Absolutely nothing. What is he talking about going on over in China with the Muslim Uyghurs to the tune of 1 million of them, most of whom have had their wives raped and impregnated to start a new bloodline by the Chinese Communist Party? He says nothing. So his speech is bought and paid for. And congratulations, you all bought it. This is your corporate system that wages social issue wars through celebrity culture. And they have got us buying and paying for it every single time. And they walk away with a check. Jesse Smollett, no different. I'm not picking on black people. By the way, Colin Kaepernick was raised by 2 white people. Those are his parents. I'm not getting on him about being adopted, but when he's getting up there and saying white privilege, I'm going, hold up your mother and father right then and there, and also hold up that big fucking check that you cashed because a white man gave that to you. Oprah Winfrey, I'm just going to give you, Oprah Winfrey did the Oprah conversation on Apple last year. Was talking about how, literally had a guest on there who's saying, I feel that white people who are actually poorer than black people still suffer less than rich black people. And Oprah's, the same day, the head publisher of Hearst magazine, the owner of Harpo magazine, her magazine, I forgot the guy's name. I was in the news, wasn't in the mainstream news, but it was in the news, that he had to resign and step down from his position at 57 from that thing because he was involved in sexual abuse of some of the interns, males. She said nothing of his white privilege. And he's going to get away with it, or he's going to get a reduced sentence. So fuck all of these people from telling you anything that is real anymore. I'm angry at them. I'm angry at me for trusting them for so very long. I'm angry at other people who do not see the deception. And let me just say this, it's not going to be uniform. In this time, you're going to be seeing idol worship, cult worship, like you've never seen before. And Hollywood is going to become what it has always been intended to become, which is a cult. It is a cult. Filmmakers and artists and all those people that said, oh my God, what are we going to do? You're an artist. You've got all the utility to make film and tell stories. What the fuck do you need these people for who do this shit to children and have the gall to turn around and mock you in your faces as they're billionaires and millionaires, telling you that they're living and slumming it just like you, and that they understand what your life is like and what the real black experience is, or whatever the fuck it is that they're peddling. This is their own fucked up point of view. And they've got an industry that has rewarded it and catered to them and fed that ego over decades. And they fed it to all of you, and they fed it to their sycophants. We see them up on television with their smiling faces, and let me just say this, psychopaths learn how to imitate behavior, mirror it back to you so that it appears to be normal. And in little glimpses here and there with some truth, true things that are being discussed, they must be right. They must live a very virtuous life in that millionaire, billionaire world. They must be. They're the good ones. They're the ones that want what's best for us. It's just these other people over here. These other what? These other powerless people over here have the power. You have the power. You're on TV. You're able to tell millions of people what is true and what's not true. And you say that the people who are causing the problem have no power? That's kind of funny. That's kind of odd. How is that possible? White supremacy. Oh, really? Oh, how convenient of you. It's invisible. You can't see it, but you can if you look for it. You see what I'm saying? This is the shit. This is their kingdom. We are a player. You don't want to play in that world. It'll make you sick, as you're seeing right now. The manifestation of this horror is coming to us and will be with us as a feature if we do not change. But like I said, this is the thing, and it's a hard conversation to have because you're going to go, no, they will. But what about? But what about? But what about? And it's like, yes, again, you are a codependent child of an alcoholic parent for which you are demanding that alcoholic parent who is always driven drunk to stop what they're doing. And you will throw yourself in front of them and kill yourself in order to make it real. You will die for these people to keep the lie going. For all of you that have survived, whatever it is that you've been through, you didn't swallow the lie all the way. That's why you're alive. That's why you're here. You wouldn't take it. You were that artist that wouldn't go through the program the way they wanted everybody else to go through. This is your divinity. This is your calling if it speaks to you. I'm not saying you have to go out and be a preacher. I'm not telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing. I'm saying you have to embrace your own life in a way that has not been given to you before. And it's the one you were born into. It's the real human story that you haven't told yet. It has yet to be told. For all that you learn about conspiracy and you know how these people work and their dark magic and shit, their whole world is dealt in illusions and deceptions to make you think that they're intelligent. They know nothing. They're like the Emperor at the end of Return of the Jedi. The Return of the Jedi is probably one of the Star Wars, the original, is probably the most, you could extrapolate so much of the mystical concepts out of that. Forget the storyline, think about what Yoda's talking about to Luke. Think about what Vader is saying. Think about what all the characters in that story are telling you, not about the events that are happening and who's what and what. Strip out the labels and just take the concepts out of them. They're all there. So what happens is that Emperor, evilest son of a bitch in the galaxy, is telling Luke that you will be turned. You will do my bidding. I have foreseen it. See? And what does he do? He only can lure Luke into that truth by tempting him with fear and hatred. And when he realizes that he lost himself for a moment and almost killed his father, killed Vader, became possessed to kill that evil, he caught himself in the moment and he turned and he said, I will never become like you. I will never turn to the dark side. And it revealed in the Emperor what has always been true, which is that evil knows nothing what is true. It can only deceive you through the illusion of what looks true if you don't know what you are. And what you are is not a thought of what you are. What you are is an awareness, a being like a child is a being. A child does not know it's a child, doesn't know it's a baby, doesn't understand the world it lives in, but it's an aware being of observation and play. And when you look at the words of Christ, and Christ says, you must humble yourself like these children if you wish to enter the kingdom of heaven, for the world was made for these children. It's all there. We make it difficult. We add the suffering to the mix by participating in the co-creation of their hell. And we call it reality with them, and we call it our reality with them. And the truth of the matter is that when you break that courtship, you're going to learn how to walk and crawl and stumble forward in a way that will lead you on a path not only to the world that you want to live in as you do in the present, but the one that you're creating for yourself in the afterlife. And that's really not like a formula so much as it is a concept. It's either true or not true. If this is the one life that you have, and when you die, that's it, and you just go to sleep and you stay asleep until the Son of God comes, well, then you have no responsibility to do anything. You really don't. Just like, well, Christ is going to come back. Fuck, I can do whatever I want. He'll forgive my sins. Or just say, well, that's those people who believe that. Okay, cool. When it's at your doorstep is a whole other issue. That's when you'll change. And maybe for some people it takes that. I do understand that it's not easy. And forging through trauma and pain that I have done, the crying that I've done, you saw a glimpse of it, it's a worthwhile exercise, because once you see the truth about yourself and you see your truth about your emotional reality of your childhood and you begin to feel it, not from an intellectual exercise and like, okay, but one where you really allow yourself to begin to cry those tears of sadness and grief, you bless them. You bless them in a way that you didn't think was possible, which is the lesson, thank you, God, I survived and I can see the truth for myself at this time right now when it is most critical. I tell people, if you're going to pray to God, ask him for the lessons that you need in order to be able to see the truth for yourself of what's right in front of you, to make yourself no longer blind, to use your eyes for the real things that they're designed to do, not the sensory perception of threat that they give you on TV. Use your ears and you hear the truth for the first time. You're no longer deaf, so that you don't respond to all that is coming at you and being told at you, but to hear and hold the truth about what you know to be. In when you hear it, you can hear the truth being spoken. You can see the truth being manifested because you are that creation and you identify and understand that creation in others. It's common. It's not separate. It's not a mystery. Once you discover what you are and you put yourself on that path, you will see those signatures in everybody. You will be able to see yourself as a child of God and that child of God and Christ in that person and Christ in that person. The beggar, the leper, the thief, the homeless person, the one that doesn't, by the world standards, deserve anyone's love. That's really what it comes down to, is that the world will judge them and say, you know what, you put yourself in that situation, and I'm sorry for you, but I got to go to my job and, good luck. Or just ignore them and say, you know what, you're not me. The truth of the matter is that child, that was a child one day that never saw themselves in that position. And anybody that's ever been homeless will tell you that you will do things that you don't think you're doing right now when you're wearing that suit and tie and you've got that little, but you will do it. The guy told me, he said, you think you won't stand there and beg for food. You think that you won't search through a trash can for scraps that people have eaten off of and that there's been, potential spit and everything else in there, and you'll reach around the diarrhea diaper to get that food when you're hungry. He said, yes, you will. You don't think you will, but you will when it's confronted with you. And that's not a threat to anybody. It just should be that what we think we are in relation to somebody else is a total artificial construct of what we've put together in society. And I'm not some, I have my human life too, like everybody. So the only thing that I have is my awareness to keep looking, keep searching deeper and deeper, and get stronger more and more. And really, it's not, like I said, it's not like I'm pumping myself up. It's more like I'm riding this wave, man. I'm riding this wave, and I'm going to try to enjoy it more and more each day.
Yeah, wonderful. What we have not talked about yet is your current movie, right?
That's right. Game Day.
Yeah.
If people want to see the teaser, I'll give you the link. But if you want to go on YouTube, you look up Game Day teaser number 2. Game Day is a movie that we're very proud of. This is my 7th feature. It's the one after A Child's Voice, which was on human trafficking of children. It's a supernatural thriller. If you haven't seen that, it's on Vimeo on demand. You can find it on my website. Still available there for rental and download. But Game Day is a totally different type of film. This is based on a true story about a Philadelphia native Italian-American family who gather each and every Sunday in their home as a ritual to watch their beloved Eagles take on their nemesis. And in this particular day, they're going to watch the Cowboys, which is their most hated rival. And over 4 quarters of the football game, including halftime, the family rivalries begin to explode. And so all of that passion for the sport and the hatred of their rival becomes the passion and the hatred in the family. And the truth begins to be spoken for the first time by each and every character who is both a truth teller and their own contradiction. And it's the young and the old. It's grandpa and grandma, brothers, husband and wife. All of the connections, all of the relationships in the family begin to come undone as the truth begins to be told. And this is a beautiful film. This is a film that I will tell you, whether you're a football fan or not, the dynamic of the family is relatable across all languages and cultures, because we all fight, we all have our disagreements, and we all have our issues that we're dealing with. And sometimes it really comes down to admitting that you made a mistake. And that's what this family is starting to realize, is that it's made some mistakes, some more devastating than others, some more unaware than others. And yet there is healing, and there's care, and there's love. And the people of Philadelphia, I got to know them, I'm not in mass, but all of the ones that I met when I was there, it's like working class, blue collar to intellectual, college liberal, and there's a brutality there in that city, 300-year-old city. And what I saw was the heart in that brutality that really made it worthwhile, because this is based on a true story. The mother and father of the movie, who the grandparents represent in the film, have been together for over 55 years. They still love each other. They're still hanging in. I got to meet them. It's pretty cool. When you get to make these films about people, that you get to meet the real life people. And you saw the love in their eyes. Crazy as hell. Crazy shit. I mean, shit that you could not believe that they've lived through and done to their own children, and done to each other. And yet there is love and care there. There is that for which holds the whole damn thing together. And so game day is a celebration of the very things that we all cherish, our rituals, our rivals. And it's literally a group of underdogs in a family who are up against the ropes fighting each other, and they're not going to go down. And the reality is that in the end, whether you win or lose, you have to get back up and play the game again. And that's the game of life. And we use that film as a metaphor to that in a very quiet, subtle, and beautiful way. This is a movie about love, real love, love that is hard and tough, love that requires our work, our effort. The truth must be spoken first if there is to be love ever. And from that, you don't know what is possible, because you have to learn to let go. And letting go means you love that person so much that you care for them, because this is where they really are. You're not trying to make them be something that you're not. Because if you do that, you're just going to make your life miserable and everybody else is miserable until you do what you want to do. You have to first do what you want to do, and then the person comes along with the dance and says, all right, I'm dancing now. Not, hey, get over here. I know what's best for you. This is what you need. Because this is what I need. That's really what they're secretly saying. They're saying, this is what I need. I need somebody to love me. But I'm going to love you. And then you're going to love me. And it doesn't work that way. Game day is in post-production. This is my only ask or pitch, if you will, is that I have a GoFundMe right now where I'm trying to raise the last $5,000. I know that sounds like peanuts in a movie, and you wouldn't believe what I can do with $5,000. But I'm not independently supported by Hollywood. I do have investors, and I also take the profits from my previous film, A Child's Voice, and I put it into this one because I believe in telling stories and doing art. That's why I was able to do 7 films in 11 years, as opposed to what most producers do, is one every 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 after having several set up over years. So we make movies that we care about. And if you care about what we're doing and you like what we're doing, we're going to offer you perks. We're going to give you a free download of the film with $10 donation. If you put in 20, 30, 40, 50, or 100, there's other perks involved. We'll give you more movies. We'll give you all of our films. Plus, if you do $100, you're going to get your name in the credits as a special thanks for having actually helped to make this film happen. And what we're going to do, we hope to, is to do an online premiere for our backers, because they're the ones that are the real investors. They're doing it because they care about what we're doing. They're not looking, when I say a real backer investor, it's like somebody who believes in you. somebody who believes in what you're doing and that they're wanting to put forward the good. And so if anybody would like to support that, you can find our GoFundMe on my Linktree at Linktree at / no restrictions. You'll find the game day GoFundMe there, or you can look up GoFundMe GoFundMe.com / game day movie. And I think you'll find it there. And then you can contribute. Will help us out. We'll be out in the fall. And we plan on doing a digital release by the first quarter of next year. So everybody will get their film and they'll get our other films if we put in more money. And I can't wait to do the next one that we're going to do called A Little Box of Hope. And so we're going to keep going. And as long as there's an appetite, first in us, that we love what we do, but that people really enjoy the movies that we produce and make. And we're growing as artists, so we're getting better at it too. And I would say that if you watch that game day trailer, you can get a taste of what this movie is going to be about. And I think you'll really like it. And it'll be a fun time.
That sounds very interesting.
I know we've been talking forever.
Yeah, but the cool thing is that I had a lot of notes, but basically you covered everything anyway, even if I didn't put in my questions. So
you didn't show me those beforehand, did you?
No, maybe telepathically.
That's what I'm saying.
It's possible. I don't know. But thank you so much for coming. That was really fun. And if you want, you can stay on after we turn off the recording. Sure. And thanks to you, and thanks to Tamara, our silent technical support. And this was Colors of the Universe on Ascension Radio.
Thank you for listening to Colors of the Universe here on KMPQ Ascension Radio. If you feel inspired, please spread the message. Visit us on radio.ampeg.org or try our social media. And now, have a colorful day.